You know, when we think about taking down a massive criminal empire, we're almost conditioned by movies to picture this very physical event.
Oh, totally, like knocking down a literal fortress.
Exactly. You batter the gates, you kick in the doors, capture the Kingpin, and the empire just crumbles. It's finite.
You cut off the head of the snake, and the body dies. I mean,
Mm.
that's been the traditional law enforcement playbook for, well, essentially a century.
Right, you find the central command, you destroy it, and everyone scatters. But, and this is a big set, but when you look at the digital underworld today, that whole fortress metaphor completely falls apart.
Yeah, it really does.
We're looking at a criminal landscape that has evolved into something entirely different. It's invisible, it's everywhere at once, and honestly, if you're managing any kind of digital security for your company, it's a little terrifying.
It is the absolute definition of a decentralized abyss. The concept of a head of the snake, it just doesn't apply anymore.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at an absolute mountain of fresh intelligence today. I'm talking about the 2026 Chainalysis Crypto Prime Report, threat intel from TRM Labs, Cybele Angel, CloudSec, Dexpose.
And some truly fascinating market research on IPFS gateways.
Yes, exactly. It's an enormous volume of data, but it all points to one massive, undeniable shift in how the shadow economy operates.
Which is what we're here to break down for you.
Right. So our mission for today, we are unpacking the startling evolution of that shadow economy. How did cybercrime transform from a centralized, Amazon-like marketplace into a $154 billion decentralized Hydra in 2026?
It's a massive shift.
Okay, let's unpack this by actually going back in time a little bit, because to understand this Hydra, we have to look at the ghost of the biggest kingpin of the last decade.
Yeah, we really have to set the historical baseline with the 2017 takedown of AlphaBay.
Operation Bayonet.
Exactly, Operation Bayonet. At the time, AlphaBay was the undisputed titan of the dark web. Just to give you some context on the sheer scale, it was 10 times the size of the original Silk Road.
10 times? Wow. I mean, the Silk Road was already a global phenomenon, so AlphaBay must have been moving an astronomical amount of product.
The volume was staggering. The founder was this Canadian guy named Alexandre Cazes. He went by the pseudonym Alphas 2.
Okay.
And what's crucial to understand about Cazes is that he operated AlphaBay less like a street criminal and much more like a massive corporate CEO.
Right, he was running a business.
A huge business.
Yeah.
He built a $500 million empire, facilitating hundreds of thousands of dollars in illicit transactions every single day. I mean, he had staff, he had dispute resolution, he had marketing.
But for all his corporate level success and, his tech savvy, he completely ignored something crucial.
Technical debt.
Yes, digital technical debt. He left a loose thread in the code from the very early days of the site, and it led to an almost comically amateur operational security error.
It was an astonishing oversight, really. For a platform built entirely on the promise of extreme anonymity for its buyers and sellers, Cazes used his personal 2008 Hotmail address.
Wait, a Hotmail address?
Yeah, pimplex91 at hotmail.com.
Oh my God.
He used that as the underlying from address for system-generated welcome and password reset emails on the site.
Wait, so every time a new drug dealer or a hacker signed up for this ultra-secret darknet market, the automated welcome email they received secretly contained the founder's personal Hotmail address in the email headers.
That is exactly what happened. Law enforcement simply analyzed the headers of those automated emails, found the Hotmail address, and traced it back to a very public LinkedIn profile and an old tech forum post under his real name.
That is wild. It's like building a billion-dollar high-tech fortress complete with lasers and armed guards, but leaving the spare key under a welcome mat from 2008.
That's a perfect way to put it. And that wasn't his only fatal mistake regarding centralization. When law enforcement eventually tracked him down and arrested him in Thailand, his laptop was sitting right on his desk, completely unencrypted.
No way.
Yeah, he was actually logged into an AlphaBay server as an administrator the exact moment they grabbed him.
So he didn't even have a chance to lock the screen. And didn't that laptop have like a literal spreadsheet of his global assets?
It mapped everything.
Right.
All his global assets across multiple jurisdictions, luxury cars, properties in Thailand, Cyprus, Antigua. It conveniently led police to a complete global asset seizure.
Wow.
He had centralized the entire market's infrastructure on a few physical servers, and he had completely centralized his own vulnerabilities on one unencrypted laptop.
Okay, hold on. I have to push back here, though.
Sure.
If law enforcement proved they could take down the absolute biggest kingpin in the world with some basic digital police work and a Hotmail slip-up in 2017, why on earth are we dealing with record-breaking $100 billion cybercrime in 2026.
That's a fair question.
I mean, shouldn't that takedown have been the fatal blow? Shouldn't that have scared everyone off?
You would naturally assume a bust, that massive, would have a chilling effect. But the AlphaBay takedown actually forced the underworld to evolve.
Evolve how?
Well, law enforcement proved to the criminal ecosystem that cutting off the head of a centralized market works brilliantly. So, the criminals learned the lesson. They stopped building heads entirely.
Wow, they stopped building heads.
Exactly.
That brings us to what the intelligence reports from Dexbase and CloudSeek are calling the Hydra model.
What's fascinating here is how the Darknet fractured between 2023 and 2026. The monopoly era is completely dead.
Right.
Today, no single marketplace owns more than 25% of the illicit market share.
So instead of one massive superstore like AlphaBay where you could buy anything from narcotics to stolen credit cards, the market specialized.
Highly specialized.
The data breaks this down perfectly. You have Torzon handling general goods and drugs, but then you have STYX Market, which specializes strictly in financial fraud and money laundering services.
And then there's Russian Market, which is almost entirely dedicated to trading stolen digital identities.
Right. So this division of labor acts as a powerful defense mechanism.
Precisely. If Europol or the FBI manages to take down STYX, it doesn't paralyze the drug trade on Torzon or the identity theft on Russian Market. The ecosystem just routes around the damage.
It just heals itself.
Exactly. But the structural changes go much deeper than just splitting up the storefronts. It's how these sites are actually hosted today that makes them nearly invincible.
This is the shift to IPFS, right? The Interplanetary File System. We have an entire market outlook report on this, and it honestly blew my mind.
Yeah, the game changer. For years, Darknet markets lived on centralized servers, usually accessed via the Tor network. Now, Tor hides where the server is, but there is still a physical box in a data center somewhere, maybe in Germany or Russia.
And if police find that physical box, they can literally just unplug it.
Exactly. IPFS changes that paradigm completely.
So for you listening, think of it like this. The traditional web uses location-based addressing. It's like going to a specific address, say a 123 Main Street, to get a book. If the police board up that house, you can't get the book.
Right.
But IPFS uses cryptographic hash content-based addressing.
Exactly. Instead of asking the network, where's this file located, your browser asks, who has a copy of this specific file?
It's like walking into a massive crowded stadium and shouting, who has a copy of this book? And thousands of different people hand you a single page. You can't board up the whole stadium.
The data for these marketplaces is now distributed across thousands of different individual nodes globally. Every user on the network is hosting a tiny encrypted fragment of the marketplace.
So imagine playing an impossible game of whack-a-mole. If the database is literally everywhere on this IPFS network at once, wait, how do authorities ever actually shut a site down?
It becomes incredibly difficult. Traditional server seizures are nearly impossible now. Authorities have to target the specific gateways that bridge the normal web to the IPFS network, or they have to try and disrupt the underlying financial flows.
But the data itself.
The listings for stolen data or illicit services, it persists. It's practically indestructible.
And, if you build an indestructible, decentralized, highly efficient financial infrastructure for drug dealers and hackers, it's only a matter of time before bigger fish take notice.
Oh, for sure.
Entire countries realize they can use that exact same plumbing.
The sheer scale of the Darknet has exploded to a point where it is now a major geopolitical tool. The infrastructure built by scammers is now handling the shadow finance of nation-states.
Right, and the 2026 Chainalysis Crypto Crime Report puts a hard number on this, and it is staggering. Illicit cryptocurrency addresses received at least $154 billion in 2025.
A 162% increase year over year.
Which is wild. And a quick note for you listening, we are analyzing this data purely as facts regarding blockchain efficiency. We aren't taking any political sides or endorsing any viewpoints regarding the nations involved here. We're just looking at the raw numbers.
And looking at those numbers, a massive driver of that 154 billion isn't just your standard ransomware gang. It's sovereign nation-state activity.
Right. Nations under heavy economic sanctions are adopting this simply because the plumbing works. They are cut off from the global banking system, from SWIFT, so they use the Darknet's rails.
The data from Chainalysis shows a 694% surge in sanctions evasion volume.
694% in 1 year, that's unbelievable.
Take the events of February 2025. Russia launched a ruble-backed crypto token called A7A5. In less than 1 year, That single token transacted over $93.3 billion.
Just massive scale.
Because it's a token on a blockchain, it moves across borders instantly, completely bypassing traditional international banking controls.
The reports also highlight the DPRK North Korea. They hacked $2 billion in 2025 alone.
Yeah, largely driven by a massive $1.5 billion mega hack of the Bybit exchange.
And they are using these decentralized protocols to launder that money and fund their state programs.
Exactly. When you look at that $154 billion figure, you really shouldn't just see a crime statistic. You should see a metric of massive operational efficiency. The network can handle the load.
But the reality is, big numbers like $154 billion can start to feel very abstract, very invisible.
Sure.
But this massive influx of money into the shadow economy is funding horrific physical realities on the ground.
The professionalization of this money has directly led to the professionalization of scams, and it's backed by severe physical coercion.
Here's where it gets really interesting and honestly incredibly dark. TRM Labs and Elliptic both highlight the rise of Southeast Asian scam compounds in their intelligence.
Yes, these are massive, high-yield business models operating in places like Cambodia and Myanmar.
And they utilize human trafficking and forced labor to run industrial-scale fraud operations. People are lured with fake job offers, trapped in these compounds, and forced to run crypto scams online 16 hours a day.
And the violence isn't just contained to those compounds. We are seeing a bleed over into the physical world in Western countries, too.
You're talking about the wrench attacks.
Yeah, what they call wrench attacks. Criminals are realizing that digital security has actually gotten quite good in some areas.
Right.
The easiest way to steal $1 million in crypto isn't always to spend months trying to hack a complex smart contract. Sometimes it's much faster to find out who holds the crypto, physically assault them, literally hit them with a wrench, so to speak, and force them to hand over their private keys.
It's terrifying. And behind all this organized crime, behind the scam compounds and the syndicates, is a new type of Darknet institution. The reports call them guarantee markets.
They operate effectively as trust as a service.
Which sounds like a legitimate Silicon Valley startup pitch, but the mechanics are wild.
They really are.
Because criminal syndicates need to do business with each other. A scam compound might need to hire a money launderer. But they obviously can't trust each other, and they can't call the police or sue for breach of contract if someone runs off with the funds.
So platforms like Hyoni Guarantee stepped into that void. They act like a twisted corporate escrow department.
Walk us through how that actually works. If I'm a syndicate hiring a launderer, what do I do?
You don't send the money directly to the launderer. You deposit your crypto into a smart contract controlled by Hyoni Guarantee. The launderer sees the money is locked in.
Okay, so they know the money is real.
Right. Then they perform the illicit service. Once both parties confirm the job is done, the escrow releases the funds.
But what if someone lies?
If there's a dispute, say the launderer claims they did the work, but the syndicate disagrees, Hyoni steps in, reviews the evidence, and arbitrates the dispute for a percentage fee.
It's just like a real business. They don't commit the primary crimes themselves. They just provide the reliable financial plumbing and dispute resolution that allows these massive syndicates to scale.
And they operate at an unbelievable scale. When Hyoni began to face pressure from authorities, operations seamlessly migrated to its successor, Tudo Guarantee.
Just a rebranding, essentially.
Pretty much. Elliptic's data shows Tudo processed $12 billion in escrow before it was forced to wind down following the arrest of the Prince Group chairman in early 2026.
$12 billion just in escrow for scams. And the output of all this infrastructure is terrifyingly effective. Scam payments surged 253% in 2025.
Yeah.
The average payment a victim made hit $2,764. And a huge driver of the success rate is the deployment of AI and deepfake capabilities.
Oh, absolutely. They can clone voices and generate video in real time to convince victims to send funds. They're operating like highly funded tech corporations, complete with R&D departments.
Which brings us to a very practical question for you listening, especially if you work in any kind of corporate environment. If these syndicates are operating like tech giants, what exactly are their assets in 2026?
It's definitely not what it used to be.
Right. How are they infiltrating legitimate businesses? Because it's not just about stealing credit card numbers anymore.
No, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the entire concept of what a hacker targets has fundamentally shifted. The true assets traded on markets like SDYX and Russian market today are stealer logs, RDP access, and session cookies.
Okay, let's break those down, starting with the session cookie, because this is how people are actually getting breached today.
It really is.
When you log into your company's web portal or your email, your browser saves a cookie so you don't have to enter your password every single time you click a new page.
Think of the session cookie like a VIP wristband at a club. You show your ID and your ticket at the front door that's your password and your multi-factor authentication, your MFA.
Right.
The bouncer checks them and gives you a wristband. As long as you wear that wristband, you can walk anywhere in the club without showing your ID again.
And attackers have realized that stealing your password is often completely useless now because of MFA. Even if they have your password, they don't have your physical phone to approve the push notification. But if they steal your active session cookie, if they steal that VIP wristband,
They bypass the front door entirely. They inject the stolen cookie into their own browser, and the corporate server simply assumes they are you. They never trigger an MFA prompt because, as far as the system is concerned, you've already authenticated.
they just walk right in.
Walk right in.
And this ties perfectly into the dominant tactic of 2026, which the Cyber Angel report details, living off the land, or LOTLL.
Groups like Volt Typhoon and Scattered Spider have perfected living off the land. In the past, attackers would break into a network using noisy, custom-built malware.
Stuff that's easy to spot.
Right, they would drop executable files that antivirus software is specifically trained to look for. That triggers alarms.
But living off the land means they don't bring any of their own tools.
None at all. They use a stolen session cookie to log in as a legitimate employee. Then, they use the company's own native administrative tools, things already installed on the computer, like PowerShell or Remote Desktop Protocol, RDP.
And RDP is literally just the tool IT departments use to take over your screen and fix a problem remotely.
Exactly. So to the automated security systems, it doesn't look like a Russian hacker deploying malware. It just looks like Janice and accounting is working late, running some standard system updates using native Microsoft tools.
Wow.
They blend in perfectly with normal network traffic.
Completely perfectly. And when they finally exfiltrate the company's data and demand a massive ransom, or when they cash out their fraud, we see that the financial landscape has shifted as well, right?
Right.
Bitcoin is increasingly becoming a liability for elite actors.
Oh, major liability. Bitcoin's ledger is entirely public. Every transaction is visible to anyone.
Right.
With the rise of AI-powered forensic tools, like the ones Chainalysis uses to trace funds across thousands of wallets in seconds, law enforcement has gotten incredibly good at following the Bitcoin.
So we've seen a massive shift toward a different cryptocurrency called Monero, or XMR.
Yeah, Monero.
And Monero is designed from the ground up to be untraceable, right?
It uses advanced cryptography to obscure the sender, the receiver, and the exact amount sent. If I send you Bitcoin, everyone sees my wallet address, your wallet address, and that I sent exactly 1 Bitcoin.
It's all out in the open.
But if I send you Monero, the blockchain just records a scramble of cryptographic dust. Nobody knows who sent it, who received it, or how much was transferred.
That's crazy.
For high-risk actors operating in 2026, using Monero isn't just a preference. It is a mandatory operational standard to evade global police tracking.
Okay, wait. If attackers are using our own legitimate employee credentials and native tools to bypass our network alarms, and they are moving their money through completely untraceable Monero, how are companies supposed to defend themselves? I mean, you can't just install an antivirus and call it a day anymore.
No, you really can't. Defense in 2026 requires behavioral analytics. You have to monitor not just who logged in, but what they're doing.
Context is everything.
Exactly. Is it normal for Janice in accounting to download a terabyte of proprietary data from the engineering server at 3:00 a.m.? You have to secure the continuous session, not just the initial password check.
So what does this all mean? Let's take a breath and look at the journey we've just been on. We've gone from a single kingpin making a sloppy Hotmail mistake in 2017, leading to the total collapse of his centralized empire,
To today,
to 2026, where we face a $154 billion decentralized Hydra. Nation-states are using it to evade sanctions, massive scam compounds are running deep fakes through it, and they are using IPFS and Monero to completely outmaneuver global police.
the overarching lesson is that the paradigm of disruption has to change. You can't just take down a website anymore. You have to disrupt the underlying infrastructure, the guarantee markets, and the financial off-ramps.
You can't knock down a fortress that doesn't exist in one physical place.
But this raises an important question, and it's something truly provocative buried deep in the Chainalysis report, specifically regarding the data on fentanyl and stimulants.
Oh, the public health angle. Yeah, this completely changes how we view this data.
For years, we've viewed blockchain data purely as a forensic tool, a way to catch the bad guys after a crime has already been committed.
A reactive tool.
Right. But the data shows something remarkable. The size of crypto purchases for raw stimulant materials on darknet markets correlates directly and reliably with severe health outcomes in the real world.
So if the bulk orders of raw chemical precursors or specific narcotics spike on the blockchain,
Hospitalizations and overdoses inevitably spike in specific geographic regions shortly after. The on-chain data acts as an incredibly accurate, real-time, early warning signal.
it completely flips the script. The very transparency that criminals are trying to hide from the public ledger of these transactions could be used proactively.
Instead of just using crypto data to arrest people retroactively, could hospitals, harm reduction centers, and local governments use the transparency of the blockchain to predict and prepare for overdose crises weeks or months before they actually hit the emergency rooms? Could this vast criminal infrastructure actually become our most powerful tool for proactive public health?
That is a wild, fascinating thought to leave you with today. We started by talking about a physical fortress and how comforting it is to just knock down the walls, arrest the kingpin, and find the spare key under the welcome mat.
It's a nice thought, but it's outdated.
It is. The reality of 2026 is that the fortress is gone. It's an invisible, decentralized matrix. But maybe, just maybe, if we learn how to read that matrix properly, we can use their own operational data against them to do some real, tangible good in the physical world.
It's definitely something to think about.
Thanks for taking the deep dive with us today. We'll catch you next time.